I'm gonna test our audio in here. I can't hear Randy, so.
I can hear you guys. You guys.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Now we can. Yep,
Good.
we're good.
Okay. Yeah, I showed the audio coming through the Royce City laptop, so it felt.
I can send it to you. Give me 1 second.
Here, we just got it turned up, Randy. Hold on 1 sec.
Oh, good. It sounded fine.
I didn't eat the brownies. I ate so much at Disneyland. I didn't cut my eyes.
Well, you know, city council.
I ate so much. Log, but you go back 2 doses.
See daylight. Like if you got a dragon, literally, it would go water. And if you get 52 but you can see daylight. Only if it's blowing with rain. It's not my office. Yeah, it's only Daddy's office. Maybe we can't we just put like a pictures of the entire department in front of it? Tell us who. We have Carl Dolan. I told him I'm not doing one until fall. I'll just try to do you and you guys run with it.
It's like this really thin, nice looking and type of guy.
Now we're on YouTube.
That's where I met. He's like, do you think so? And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh."
Trying to
I'm
do
good.
one to go through.
Right.
A couple of weeks.
Okay.
Gotta keep
Are you
it.
set? Have
Can I
fun.
close out of this YouTube?
Yeah, now that it's. Yep. Okay. Have fun.
Hey, my printer works.
Hey, good.
I printed stuff.
printed all this stuff?
Thank you. All the stuff.
Andy deserted you.
I know.
They were supposed to sit there.
Yeah, Andy.
They named it. Fix that.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, but.
Neighbor, friend.
True.
How could you manage to put that much cat hair on a chair?
Maybe they brought her cat to make me.
2 minutes. Unless you
Ate
want to be
all my
on,
crunchy stuff first.
unless you want to be on camera eating, Ann. Oh, but everybody's got to have nourishment. You just tell me when you're
We should be.
when you're ready.
We should have that, just in case.
You throw my plate away too.
You ate that pretty quick, Ann.
I did. I'm a fast eater. One thing I learned to be once I had kids. Before they woke up, I had to hurry and eat.
Okay. Hey, you got the recorder on and we'll get started.
We are recording. Amber or Andy's getting our little handheld recorder.
Just for a backup.
Back up. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everybody to the Royce City Council special work session for May 16th. Time is 5 o'clock. I want to welcome and recognize that we have Council Member Jackson, Council Member Joe Paul, Council Member Wilson, and Council Member Sophie Paul. And I believe we have Randy Scadden on the
Zoom. Yes, sir. I'm here.
okay. Put you down as electronic. I hope it's warm in that little place in Miami you are.
Well, 20 minutes delayed coming in due to monsoon conditions. So yes, it's warm.
Okay. Discussion item tonight is going to be looking at the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. I hope you had a chance to look over the documents that was presented. And if you got questions with that, we're going to turn the time over to Matt and Amber. They have a little presentation they want to just follow up with, and then we'll get into conversation. Matt, Amber, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And everybody, thanks for coming out. As you guys know, in the previous city council meeting, we as staff turned over the budget to the city council members to review. That's the budget needs to be adopted in June unless we choose to go forth with the tax increase, and then it would be more like August. But with that being said, the priorities of the budget, we wanted to keep things more status quo. The things that we've been doing, like the salary survey, we finished that up with the part-timers in this budget. So every full and part-time city employee has been looked at now with this budget. Also, we talked a little bit when we were adopting the salary increases back in June or January. We talked about re-implementing a COLA for city employees so we can keep up with other jurisdictions or other cities around us. And so that COLA is 9% or 2%, 9% health increase. So everything is balanced as is right now in accordance to basically what we had last year. There's still a lot of choice in this budget. I want to say that going forward, don't think that you're going to hurt any feelings if you speak up. We just here as staff want to do our best to provide the best services for the residents. So there has been a couple of questions that have popped already. That is talking about the $7 million that was cut from the budget. We wanted to explain that. And then also what a tax increase implies. So that is more estimates. I'm going to have Amber talk about a little bit with that. But we truly don't get the tax rate into the middle of June to know what a true tax increase is because of the process that the county has to go through with the state. So to say that these numbers are right on, they're just an estimate of the value above the property tax that we get. So I'll turn the time over to her. We have just a short presentation, took the things out of the budget, still kind of a choice. We've talked about in the past with the police officers and firefighters, also capital improvements at the complex. We wanted to have that type of discussion and dialogue tonight. So please, if you have any questions, just let us know and speak up, and then I'll turn the time over to Amber.
Okay, so I don't really have a presentation. I just kind of wanted to, like you said, address some things that have came up. So if you have questions, you don't need to wait till I'm done. So bring them up as we go. So this slide was on my previous presentation that talked about the major categories of revenue we have are property tax, sales tax, and franchise tax. The tallest one is the sales tax. You can see how that's grown over the last 10 years. And then on the side there, that'll show you the prior tax increases that the city has done. The previous one was in 2016, that was 37.69%. And you'll see that spike in property tax in 2017. That's the budget year that first applied to. Previously, before that, the only one was 2010 was before that, and that was only a 3% property tax increase. So that kind of gives you a history of where property tax increases have gone over the last few years. And then in the last presentation, we talked about some of the biggest non-funded items were the 5 police officers that were asked for, the 9 additional firefighters were asked for. The fire department wants to increase their apparatus replacement amount that goes into capital projects, and then the complex repairs. So to give you an idea of what a property tax increase would be for those specific items, this kind of gives you an idea. So based on 2021 values, the average home value in Roy was $320,000. Using that to get the 600 tax increase that would pay for the police officers, that would be 15.27% or about $46 per year per average home size. The $850,000 tax increase is 21.63% or about $65 per year. The $315,000 for the apparatus would be 8% per year or $24. And then for the complex, the $1,086,000 would be 27.64% or about $83 per year. So as 2022 values come in, that will probably change that average house value of Roy, but because of how the property taxes are calculated, it won't really change those numbers because as the house values go up, the property tax rate goes down and we kind of end up at the same place. So that will give you an idea of whatever you want to add to the budget. Whatever dollar amount it is, this kind of gives you an idea of what type of property tax increase that would look like. Okay. So then we talked about, there were 7.8 million over what my revenue projections were when we first received budget submittals. So the top ones we've already talked about, the 600, 850, increasing the fire apparatus, and then the $1 million of the complex. There was 1.1 million in capital that we completely took out, and we're not proposing that that be included in this budget. And that's on the next slide, so I can tell you what that was for. There was 1.8 million in capital requests that we are including. They're just over in the capital projects fund. And then there was $200,000 requested in fire operations that we had to cut out to balance the budget. Parks and Recreation requested $60,000 that we had to cut out. That was, this is over and above where we're at in the current year. So everybody was stayed where they're at, but the fire department requested an additional 200,000. Parks and Recreation requested an additional 60, and same thing with Roy Days. This is requested above where we're at right now. So we just brought them back down to where they are at on the current year. And those were the three biggest departments that requested above. And then talking to the fire department, they assured us that we could increase the paramedic revenue by about 630,000. And then we looked at sales tax projections, and we just matched what we're projecting that we will receive this year. So we were able to add 900,000 to that number. And that isn't over and above, that's just keeping it the same as what we think we'll receive this year. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions, council?
I would like to get a little bit more information about the additional asks. I mean, $500,000 for, or 600,000 for 5 new police officers. I get that, firefighters. But then as you come down through repairs for the complex, what all goes into that? And then just as we go down through some of those, what the individual things are.
And somebody correct me if I'm wrong, the 1.1 million for repairs to the complex does not include the boiler, right? That's a completely and totally separate expense that's potentially coming, correct?
No, the $1 million for the complex is basically the boiler. And then the boiling system goes into another unit that is more of a radiator to heat the water. And it's leaking quite a bit. So it's replacing that, and then the plumbing in the women's bathroom.
So is it safe to say it's a ticking time bomb?
The boiler is probably the worst part about it, and that's about a little over 100,000. Brandon's here to articulate some of this as well. The system is original. That radiator system is an original part of the complex, and that, you know, I think is over $100,000, right, Brandon?
The two items are the boiler and the pool air handler. Like you said, one heats the water, the other one heats the air inside the actual facility. They are included in that amount of the $1 million. Them together about $250,000 of it though.
Plumbing is the major portion of it.
So with that comment, Travis, here's the question. If it goes out, what happens to the complex?
Frankly speaking, if it went out, you could not heat the air inside of the pool area and or the water.
So in essence, you either, if it goes out and you said it's leaking, if it goes out, then the aquatic portion of the complex shuts down.
Correct. Correct.
And it is leaking, and your judgment is it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, that between that and building maintenance, yes, it does have issues. Now, just so everyone's on the same page, that $1 million is represented in a lot of different areas. It's $310,000 for replastering and redoing the pool. It's the $250,000 we talked about for the steam boiler and the pool air handler, $325,000 for restroom remodel. $43,000 for family changing room, $6,500 for a patio fence, $30,000 for ceiling titles, $48,000 for the aerobic room floor, $9,000 for racquetball court doors, $6,000 for a new diving board, and $30,000 for an acid room enclosure.
So that $1 million is not a Band-Aid. It takes care of a lot of stuff. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic that it takes care of most of the major ticket items that we would have for the next 10 to 15 years. Brandon could probably speak more on that than I, being it's on the maintenance side, but that money, I don't think is, I would be shocked if we came back to you guys looking for significant funds in the next 10 to 15 years. It doesn't mean we're not going to say we need $10,000 for a treadmill or $8,000 for weights or something in that realm, but that $1 million represents, frankly speaking, the bulk of the infrastructure that needs to be replaced.
Just for instance, like the plaster in the pool has been in the budget for the last couple of years, and it's always just been, we've gotten by. But right now, the rust and stuff is starting to show through. So it's to that point to where we ought to do something with it.
Do we have good numbers on utilization of it? Where our biggest utilization of the complex is at?
Utilization, I can tell you this, we get an average of 85,000 to 90,000 people use its services for its intent a year. We have some other things that happen in there that increase more people in there. And I'll give you just a quick example. On Saturday, we do a program with karate where we kind of let them subcontract it out. I'm not adding those numbers into that pool. If you did, you're closer to 100, between that and swim meets that they have at the high school and parents coming in to watch their kids take swimming lessons and different things like that. But about 100,000 people walk through the doors annually. About 85,000 of them typically are paying members. Now, of that, if you want a breakdown, I can tell you about 18,000 of them are $4 a day. Just walk in and say, here's my $4. That we get about 18,000 people in that realm. And we have about a little over 8,200 pass holders. And when I say pass holders, that implies anything from a 10-punch pass to a monthly pass to a 6-month pass to a year pass.
What about your lifetimes?
Great question. There are currently, we have 74 Charter A or Charter 1 members and about 10 Charter 2 members.
How many of your makeup of that is also this, what is it, is it Silver Sneakers, something sneakers program? Just out of curiosity,
The Silver Sneakers program that's a great question. They represent about 500 of that number that I gave you. Now, when I say these numbers, I think it's important to know there's 500 people that sign up for Silver Sneakers. Sure. They each might come 12 times, in a year, or they might come 25 times in a year. Same with the people that have memberships. I'm just telling you the total number of people that have memberships, but they each may come 60 times in a year, or they each may come twice.
Right. I mean, going back to your 18,000 people pay the $4 a day, we're talking $72,000 in revenue that the complex generates just off of those 18,000 people. Correct?
That's correct. That's obviously of your daily admissions. That's about, and that number can fluctuate a little bit yearly. Some years we've had 20,000, 25,000. Historically, on admissions, we're going to get, near $90,000 in revenue in those accounts.
And then what are we bringing in terms of like the different other memberships, just out of curiosity?
Different other types of memberships, another 90,000-ish right in there.
So let's just call for ease of computing. The complex is making $200,000 in revenue just off of just basically fees. Is that a fair statement?
That's your memberships, that's your daily admissions. That doesn't include classes and programming such as swimming lessons and aerobics and things like that.
I have a question on that. What about the school? Do we get paid or does the school pay to use that facility for swim meets or do we?
They do. It's pretty minimal. I would have to double check that amount. I think it's near $2,500 to $3,000. It's not an enormous amount of money by any stretch, but
We have 300,000 budgeted in revenue for the complex total.
Was that Amber? Sorry, I'm not.
300,000 total for the year budgeted in revenue.
Right, so we're looking at to recoup, if we did the capital improvements, the capital repairs to the complex, we'd be looking at over a 3-year delta period to recoup those just on revenue alone.
Well,
3.5.
the challenge you have is that the expense, Amber, this expense is 764,000. So 500 some odd thousand, that's going to be the just pay for personnel. So
Right.
when you start talking about revenue to compensate, the problem is that
Again, I took that into consideration, Bob. I was just talking what the repairs would cost us because, understandably, employee overhead is different.
well, it's just it's a $400,000 or $500,000 loss per year that the complex will incur, irregardless of whether you do the investment or not. It's just going to lose money.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to say if it comes down to firefighters or police in the complex, I am going to go with firefighters and police because we're constitutionally bound to provide those services. So, I mean, like I said, we're going to have especially when the boiler goes out, we're going to have a really hard decision to actually make in terms of what we do with the complex going forward.
Well, so if you do all those repairs, obviously you have to shut it down for so many months anyway.
yeah, I mean, historically, we have a 2-week shutdown. The timing of it now, being we're not really on the books to do that, we'd have to work with building maintenance and the companies. I couldn't even venture a guess of how long we'd be closed and when we'd be closed. I don't know. I'd be highly shocked if it could tie in all during the same 2-week windowed shutdown, in full disclosure.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't know that these are costs that need to happen, but in the same breath, they don't all need to happen in the same year.
So what's the most crucial thing right now?
Boiler.
The pool?
The boiler.
The boiler?
If you were to prioritize them, I would, and once again, I'd listen to what Brandon has to say on it. His team, him and Ross's team handle the maintenance part of it. But I think from a priority perspective, it would go the boiler area, the boiler and air handler would be 1. Probably the pool itself would be 2 and the locker rooms would be 3.
So the boiler, they just don't make them like they used to because the other one lasted a lot longer?
Well,
The other one lasted 50 years. The complex is now, it's in its 50th year in 2023.
It's really closer to 48. I know because me and it are really close to the same age.
I wasn't going to say anything, Travis, but
So it opened like 2 weeks after I was born. That's why we're kindred spirits. But yeah, it's. Go ahead.
Is your boiler included in your budget or not? It's not, is it? Right
No,
now?
that's part of that 1.1.
No,
It's just that.
Got
one.
kicked.
That money was not, it was asked for and we did not get it. No.
Okay.
So it just has a Band-Aid on it now, basically, the boiler.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is, and I hate to speak for Brandon's guys are having to spend, quite a bit of time keeping it going and babying it.
So throughout the on-call period, which is a week for our guys, they probably average 3 or 4 calls a week to come back in to basically reset the boiler because it has a fairly substantial leak on it. So it's tripping out.
Fairly temperamental.
Yeah, and the whole issue too is, so when they replaced that boiler, 10 years ago, yeah. So they replaced it, and the issue is when they did replace it, we had lots of rooftop air handlers, which that fed. So it was like hot water would run through them. Since then, we've replaced lots of rooftops with a standalone rooftop. So this boiler is essentially burning itself down because it's oversized for what it feeds now. Because basically all it does is it heats the pool and then heats the pool area. Other than that, the gym and everything else is on their own air handlers. So that's part of the issue too with this boiler is it's oversized and it's burning itself up.
Your personal opinion, what do you think it's worth putting the money into it and saving it? You think we'll have a senior citizen?
I'm probably not the right guy to ask. I've dedicated, I chose my.
He just said it was his kindred spirit, so.
Well, no, and frankly speaking, it's not just the complex, it's my world. I mean, my world between parks and recreation and complex and aquatic centers, and this is Book of Travis, and we can get into the politics of it all. I view those as services. I view those as services that we as a community provide our residents. And to me, they're critical. Obviously, they're critical to me. It's what I chose to make my profession. I see the value in these things. I see the value in what it does and how it brings people together. I see it, what it does for people physically and mentally and emotionally. For me personally, yes, but I also understand the challenge of making a decision like that.
So when you say services, we have those that come in and do water aerobics in the morning or throughout. I mean, one of the dilemmas with the complex is your staff from dark 30 to late evening.
The complex has almost 3 different schedules for times of the year, but it is pretty typical in fairness to what you're saying, that we are open from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week.
So I'm just looking at the core services. Is there another way to accomplish it? Even if you took the school part out of it and looked at just the other services we provide, swim lessons, water aerobics, training lifeguards, is there a way we could utilize the aquatic center? We have all the stuff at the aquatic center other than enclosure over the lap pool. Could we put an enclosure over the lap pool and run that as a part-time throughout the year and then kick it open full-time during the summer?
I mean, I don't want to say no to anything. I think where there's a will, there's a way. There would be some huge challenges to that. Where the restrooms are currently is nowhere near the lap pool. Where the parking is currently nowhere near the lap pool. There would be some challenges in enclosing it and still, I mean, like I say, I'm not saying no to anything, but.
Plus maintaining it in the winter, if people are going in there, you have
Sure.
to shovel and.
The advantages would be is that you do have the boiler there, you do have the chlorine systems, you do have the pool. So all you need is the infrastructure, but
I'm just wondering if you take the money that you're trying to limp along the current complex and invest some of that into the aquatic center to make a portion of it to where it could be used, year round, do we end up better off? I mean, there's no doubt that Roy High needs more parking. There's no doubt that at some point Roy High's going to rebuild. And if you look at the way schools have rebuilt, generally they rebuild in the parking lot, tear the building down and put the parking lot on the other side of it. So having that not as part of, the school and the city to where they could utilize that property and we could better utilize what we already have to combine them together.
I mean, that even begs the question, Joe, if we even want to still stay in the pool business, right? As far as, a year-round pool. I mean, I take it from the perspective of if somebody were to stand in front of the Shark Tank and pitch this, would this fly? Absolutely not. I mean, it's a loss leader. We continually lose money on it. And again, understandably, Travis, I get where you're coming from. My kids took swimming lessons at the complex. There's a lot of nostalgia there, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have to think of it in terms of running an actual business. And again, it's an absolute loss leader for the entire city, regardless
Well, where
of
I
how
was
you-
headed is if there are true services that we classify are necessary services to provide, could we work in another way?
Sure.
And not necessarily put it into that? Could we invest into something else that we already have that's ours? You know, you're talking about remodeling bathrooms and locker rooms. Could you take that money and turn that lap pool into kind of a self-standing by itself?
I would yield to Ross and Brandon on that question, but I would almost venture a guess what you're talking about would be significantly more than the upgrades we're talking about here. I mean,
We were kind of anticipating this question and we started looking into infrastructure down there. If we were to do something without bathrooms, just enclosing that lap pool area, doing like garage doors, if you've seen in other cities during the summers, you can open it up. You're looking around $1.5 to $2 million just for the building over it.
No bathrooms.
No bathrooms, no nothing. We
Wouldn't
do have
almost
bathrooms.
To have a bathroom.
You have the bathrooms there, but it would be a long walk from the bathrooms we have over to the lap pool.
You'd have to, I was just thinking of a way to still provide a place where you could do water aerobics, a place where you could do swim lessons, you could train your lifeguards and have that.
no, and I applaud and a lot of things we've had to do the last few years have been tried to be outside the box, critical thinking, and so I applaud your thought process. I just, from my perspective, if we were willing to allocate that kind of resources to it, I still think, look at Travis, once again, the better option is to put it back in that facility and say, hopefully this is a 15+ year investment that we don't have to, we wouldn't anticipate having to make again.
What's the warranty on a new broiler?
Years.
Yeah,
Even if it's a 15-year investment, you're still $400,000 in the rear every year, four to
So you think the
500,000.
senior citizens would go for a tax increase to keep the complex open? They love it that much?
Well, we talked about a survey. I think this would be a really good and important question to have on that because, you know, maybe that is worth it to them.
I don't deny that a survey is a pretty good idea, but the last one we did was $10,000 and the amount of how long it took and the amount of responses we got back. We're well into next budget year before we, and I'm not saying pull the lever on it. I'm just looking at different ways of, I look at, it's our biggest expense, it's our biggest loss. And so how can we make it work? Because I don't know. I hate to say it, is it a core competency? Plowing the roads, keeping people safe, putting out fires. I do believe there is a great place in the city for parks and recreation. I just question if the complex, how much of a core competency the complex is versus the other services we offer as a city. Trying to balance that out.
I just know the people that use it. I mean, I look at the Marshall White Center, I read about that in the paper all the time and all the fights and problems and that they're
We've got
going.
our own.
But I'm just wondering if it would last another year without all of these upgrades and then maybe do a survey for the next budget, say, I don't know.
I mean, talking with maintenance, I don't know. You know, I mean, the true answer is, I don't know. The boiler could last another 3 years or it could go down tonight. I don't think, you know, that there's any way that anyone can give you a really an accurate answer with that question. I mean, am I wrong when I say that, Brandon?
Yeah, no.
Well, if it went down, then we just have to shut it down, wouldn't we?
I mean, that's where I was thinking if it does go down and we haven't budgeted for it, you just shut it down until we make a further decision at that point. I'm still looking at the $400,000+ we're in the rear every year on operate. How many full-time employees do you have there?
Not counting me 3.
And it's kind of a mix because you also have people that manage the aquatic center as well, having dual roles.
And we have a lot of part-time.
We do have a ton of, yeah, we do have a lot of part-time. So when we say 3, you have a manager and then you have somebody else that works at the aquatic center, there's basically one full-time staff member just allocated to the complex, and that's it.
I mean, the
And
closest
then two parts.
place where people could go do their water aerobics would be what, Fairfield?
That's why I was thinking,
And gym.
if we could-
Gyms.
if we could utilize other resources we have and
Yeah.
I'd almost rather put money into the aquatic center than into the complex. Maybe I'm thinking wrong, but
Yeah, because does the one down by Winco have a swimming pool in it?
It's a real tiny pool.
I've never been in there.
It's not, I mean, it's,
Water aerobics and
Not a gym person. I've been in when we went on tour, the other one. That's- It's just a tough one. If it was I would just vote, we just keep putting Band-Aids out there for a year and see how it goes. If it's still, I mean, the toilet remodeling, that's just putting new toilets in, or, I mean, or what's?
no, the bathroom remodeling is, I'll let Brandon talk a little bit more
Yeah, it's
about
just
that.
remodeling the whole bathroom. So I don't know if you've been in there lately, but they redone the floor probably 10, 12 years ago. And it needs to be refinished, and then all the locker rooms are extremely outdated. Toilets, it'd basically be a full renovation on it because just everything's outdated. And then there's lots of FRP board, like a fiberglass board in there that's kind of bad. And honestly, we're probably a little bit behind the 8 ball too, as far as privacy, like in the men's, because it's got the shower columns where you just let it all hang out, I guess. So, I mean, if we did that, we would obviously do stalls and update it. So,
It could hang in there for a year, and then maybe we could do a survey before the next budget, and I don't know. And
how
then-
much does the school utilize it versus, I don't know.
Well, the swim team uses it, and then we have our own weight room at Roy High, so they don't use it for that.
There's different times throughout the year,
Basketball.
that we work with the athletic department, where they need to come in the afternoons. Maybe they have basketball games or volleyball games happen in both gyms, and they'll send them over. We work with a special needs class that comes in a couple times a week and uses some of the uses the gym and some of the places in there. They don't go in the pool, but they use the gym and do some stuff in there as well.
Speaking of that, do we still have some ownership and responsibility to the gym at Roy Junior?
Yeah, we have an agreement with the school district when it comes to that gym. Now, that gym we can use it at certain times of the day. It's after 5 PM. We couldn't do anything prior to 5 PM. But yeah, we have an agreement. You guys put us into an agreement a year or so ago on that one.
I mean, a survey, there are some benefits to doing a survey because I think there's multiple things that could be thrown out there in a survey, but nothing that's going to be figured out before this budget goes into effect. You could put public safety in there, you could put the complex in there, you could put, and it's not even those two. It's how much in public works are we not funding that needs to be done? What's our replacement policy and process that we're not getting to because you're running lean and mean like all departments are doing, but.
I think from a public works perspective, a lot of it is actually enterprise funds and then special revenue funds with Class C with the roads. But I think where public works comes in is with the employees and building maintenance, the amount of time they go up there. Of like Brandon was saying, how many times they go in to fix the boiler.
I'm just talking about, are there other projects that Public Works has out there that we're not getting to because we're running so lean and
yeah,
mean?
well, that's like he says, that comes out of different funds, but
Or money.
it is an uphill battle for sure. I mean, we just kind of picked the worst, but like we said, we're in 100 million in infrastructure, we're probably down, but we
You
just.
want better infrastructure, you want more police, you want more fire, you want the complex. I mean, that's all something you can throw out on a survey, but we're probably not going to get that till the fall.
They probably go up there daily, the repairs, probably the cost of the material.
No, there's no doubt that in all of our worlds, in all of us department heads, that this was a hard budget to prepare because the cost of everything got more expensive.
Well, they've gone up since you.
You know, fertilizer and parts and, you know, vehicles. And obviously we're all dealing with gas and different things. I mean, there's no doubt that the world is getting more expensive.
So worst case scenario, what if the boilers did go out? We shut half of it down, pool side shut down, and then you still have, is the value there still for the workout room and the basketball? Or if it's shut down, it's shut down? Or do we go, like, what do you do? Is there money, like,
Boiler heats the whole building though too, right?
No,
Or just the
no,
water area?
no, the boiler only heats, like Brandon was saying, it used to. And that was the reason that the size of the boiler that we got, but we've changed that system to where it only heats the pool area now.
is there any value though to do like if something were to happen and this was not, like, we didn't have the money for this, what would happen?
Once again, you're probably asking the wrong guy or the right guy, depending on the answer you're looking for. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's still people that play basketball and people that play pickleball and people that walk around the track and people that go lift weights and senior citizens that do silver sneakers and other programs in the aerobic room and different things like that. So absolutely, you know, in my opinion, there's a lot of, the way we run the facility, I couldn't even begin to tell you what percentage of the people go into the pool and what percentage of the people don't. It's you pay your money either in a membership or a daily admission, and the whole facility is available to you. So we don't ask, we don't say, hey, are you gonna go swimming? Or are you gonna go lift weights? We don't ask that question. Any number I gave you of a percentage that use the pool compared to the rest of the facility would be a guess. I can ask staff. They might have a better idea than me on when it comes to that
Might be
question.
good to start collecting that data, because I think if the hard decision isn't made today, it's probably gonna have to be made as soon as that boiler pops.
So is the bathrooms, this is a dumb question because it's been so long since I've been in there. But the only bathrooms are in the locker rooms, or is there other bathrooms if the pool got closed off? Is there other bathrooms?
The only restrooms are in the locker
Oh, okay.
rooms, but if that area went out, correct me if I do, we can still heat the.
Yeah, we could probably just screen the doors out or just frame the doors in or something so that we keep the heat from escaping out into the
And then
pool area.
maybe if that went out, all those people come over, we could have a survey right there for those people. Do you propose a tax increase to open the pool?
You can't just survey the ones that use it, because the people that aren't using it are paying for the people that are using it as well. So it's, you've got to have a sample survey of the whole city. So, because Travis has been on the limelight, let's shift the limelight off. And not to put others on the spotlight, but what does the 5 new police officers do for us? What does the 6 new firefighters do for us? What does the $200,000 in fire operations, and what does all that get for us? Other than 5 officers and 6 firefighters, what does the 5 officers do for us, chief?
So that will only give you 1 additional officer per 24-hour rotation. That is.
So that's an extra man per shift.
1 extra man per shift. So that's only adding our staffing, like literally 1 person to 24 hours a day.
Now, does that get us off of minimal staffing though?
So that will help. It'll do 2 things. It'll make it harder for us to reach minimum manning because it'll provide more opportunity for people to take vacation, sick leave, and go to training. But the other thing it does too is it provides opportunity for proactivity. And the hope is we'll have a lower or lesser reliance on overtime because we're not going to be meeting that minimum manning threshold as often. And
So it
so
allows us to be more reactive on things that we may not be getting to, or more proactive versus
Proactive.
reactive.
So that would give us 6-man patrol crews. Our minimum manning would remain at 3. And so at any point, we could have 3 people off, whether it be sick leave, vacation, training.
Crime doesn't seem like it's on the decrease right now.
No, not at all.
violent crime is actually going up. And so that requires more people and requires more man hours per call.
When we were down at the league, they talked about that. I went into the presentation where they talked about.
And if you'll remember the report that I gave in November, the staffing standard that we have now is the same staffing standard that was set in 2007.
Which I don't know how much our population's changed between now and then, but the level of crime, other stuff's changed.
So
Dynamic of the city's changed.
the 5 is not arbitrary, right? It's convenient that it's actually one person per crew, but that 5 new people actually would bring us up to the staffing standard that we had set in 2007. So I want to say it's like 0.4 officers for every 1,000 people back then, or 0.45 back then. We're at 0.39 or 0.4 now. This will bring us back up to 0.45. I do know that in preparing my annual report for you, I went through Chief Wyndham's annual report in 2012. That's the last ask for officers that I'm aware of. And he asked for 2. He asked for 2 officers in 2012, and that was never given to him.
So if you're shooting for 1 per shift, even if we were able to split it, I know you can't go down the middle because a half an officer doesn't exist, but 2 wouldn't, what would 2 do for you versus 5?
If we got 2 officers, both those officers would end up on swing shift, and it wouldn't do anything for Grays or Daves.
Okay, chief, other chief.
So I'm asking for 9. And nine, it's folded into multiple things. You know, minimum staffing is kind of a previous document you have. Says 17 to 19, depending on the structures you have. That 9 personnel put 3 person per shift, basically 2 based off of leave and other issues. So that just gets us up to 13 minimum staff every day. And that still doesn't even touch the 17 that I was talking about. That other 4 or more comes from a response time standard that basically set for by the National Fire Protection Association. Those times basically say you got to have so much on scene within basically 5 to 7 minutes, and within 5 minutes after that, you need to have emergency response force of 17 or more. And we augment that through our automatic aid agreements through Riverdale, Ogden, Weaver. And they usually, their first in engine usually comes with 2 to 3. And then so it takes 2 to 3 of those to get us up to that 17 and 19 based off of what it is. That's working incidents. Now, that's just on fire side of the house. So that's just to keep us up to that piece. Our call volume as annual report has gone up a large amount over the years. And since 2006, when I can look back and see data, our call volume and stuff continues to go up, and basically our ambulances and our staffing stay the same. So we have regular occurrences where we are responding to a call or out on a call, and other entities come into our a city in our community and basically transport people outside of our city. And you lose so much, you lose anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 per call for every time somebody else transports somebody out of there. And so our call volume has still gone up, and we continue to increase. I think forecasted for this year, we're with the revenue base, we're going to be probably right around 2.7 million, somewhere in there with ambulance fees, paramedic fees, and our transfer rates that have gone. If we get 9, I can actually staff a 3rd ambulance, and versus basically cross staff in our 3rd ambulances that does transfers now, could actually have that ambulance there and have a set staff that could also be used for fires, but also could be that 3rd person out where we don't lose that revenue. So then again, now it gives us back that revenue that we could potentially, or we would be potentially losing. If you look at call volumes that we lose about 1 or more calls a day to other cities where they transport.
To the tune of how much?
About 1,000 to 2,000 per call. So we're losing about 30 grand on the average, probably a month. I'd say on the low side, 15. And that's a month. So you're looking at a pretty substantial amount. Does that make up the positions, no, but that still goes there. The other thing we're.
So if you were to do another ambulance and a crew to run it, what is that expense versus income?
So the expense is basically the numbers that you see up there. So you get X number just in revenue there is about 200 and something thousand.
So just out of curiosity, there's the second bullet point from the bottom is increased paramedic revenue estimate by 630,000. Where is that coming from?
Not sure which one that.
The second one down.
On the second one down.
Yeah, second from the last bullet point, increased paramedic revenue estimate by 630,000.
So, you know how you said right now we estimated at 2.3 for next year?
Yeah.
We had it at
So-
1.7.
That's right.
And so you estimated we could bring in 2.3 this year.
2.3, and then I just got
Gotcha.
numbers again last Friday of our week, and we still got 8 more weeks on this fiscal year. And we're right at, we're projected to be right about 2.7 with PMA and everything like that. So we've got even more than that projected this year with revenue on top of.
So Amber, and this is a question for Amber and Matt, would not the 630,000 in estimated revenue be a decrease to the 850,000 that Chief Golden's requesting?
The request isn't related to the request for the new officers, new firefighters.
No firefighters. Okay, thanks.
That's just a number.
So how many what's the minimum people it would take to staff another ambulance to get that revenue?
3. That gives you a leave slot and 2 people. It's 2 point something positions.
Plus the apparatus?
The
plus the-
apparatus, no, the apparatus with the 3 apparatus we have due to come in this year. 1, hopefully, before the end of this month, and then 2 more before the end of the year. With those being said, that'll replace all of our stuff. So we'll have a backup ambulance to include actual ambulances that can respond.
So let me restate that. So we would have 2 ambulances, 1 at each station with 1 that would float that we could send out on additional calls, which would be a potential increase in revenue from lost calls. Is that a good statement there, Chief?
If we added the extra positions, we could staff all 3 and cross-man the 1 with an engine to allow 3 to 4 people to respond on an engine versus just 2.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
How's public works staffing?
We got one position cut. That was all we asked for, so we're making it work. But if we can keep them filled, that's the worst part is filling the positions. So we actually have a mechanic. Soon to be street guy probably shortly, so.
So on the 5 new police officers, do they each get their own car and they get to take them home, or do they come back in and drive their own car
So
and then take some?
we have car per man take home. And given the climate, agencies are actually allowing for larger areas for take home cars. Like, it's not uncommon now to see Summit County and Salt Lake police cars driving through Roy. That's just the nature of the beast negotiating hiring now. So what I've done is we have enough pool cars, barring any significant problems or accidents. I have enough pool cars that if we just added 1 additional vehicle to the rotation, I can outfit these 5 new guys with patrol cars right now. And I would only ask for 1 additional vehicle in the annual rotation. So this would not require us to purchase 5 additional vehicles on top of what we're already.
So that 600,000 is basically just, when it says wages and equipment, you're talking equipping the officer.
That's the officer and their equipment.
It does include the 1 vehicle.
The 1
Okay.
vehicle, yes.
And the one vehicle?
It does or doesn't?
It does.
So that's the officer, all the equipment they wear, the firearms, their vest, their belt gear, and 1 vehicle, and that's 5 guys. And then we would just keep these cars going, and we would just add 1 additional vehicle to the rotation annually.
What's a new car running nowadays?
Fully outfitted for us, a patrol car is probably $50,000-$60,000. We used to only get 4 or 5 years out of them. Now we're seeing 6 or 7 years. That's a long time, but we can make it happen. Typically, we don't want to go that long.
Where's your lottery bucket? Let's just throw it in and start pulling out.
We're having better luck with the Fords too than the Chargers.
We are.
That was.
I'm glad to hear that.
That's the same on that cost there too, Amber, for mine. That includes the PPE for each person as well. And that's about 10 grand per person for all the PPE costs for them as well as their salary.
So to clarify, for the paramedics, so there's 9 firefighters. Out of that 9, is that where the 9, you could say, if you had 3 of those, you could do the extra ambulance, or is that a separate?
No, that's the price to do those. The other thing that's out there that we won't know of until basically probably late summer or fall, when the next price increase potential to the PMA fund could be increased, but that also goes back to a study for the paramedic where they're located and where they are within the county. So currently here on the south and southwest side, the paramedic or the rescues are not able to get to the areas within the designated 7 minutes that they're supposed to. So there's a potential to put another rescue or another Roy, have 2 more paramedics. So that price that's included in there are all at the paramedic rate. So if we were able to garner or get that extra paramedic within Roy, then we could actually put another rescue in here as well. So.
Let me ask a question, council. I'm not hearing any conversation about the base document. Are you comfortable with the base document, which is already funded and basically we got an equal? And really what we're going to focus on is whether or not we're going to talk about funding these above our non-budgeted requirements.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, yeah, the base document is 100% balanced. So there's no questions there. It's now coming up to the exceeded revenue projection requests and prioritizing them and determining how we're going to fund them is my purview.
Yeah, Randy's position then would be is he feels comfortable with the base document. The question is now is how do we fund these over and above requirements that they're requesting? It's not funded.
But I'm not comfortable with the base document.
Then let's
So I'd
make
like
sure they
to-
walk out here with the base document, really feeling comfortable with that. And then we can figure out how we want to basically deal with these over and above.
I would like to review the kind of the reasoning and the calculations behind hiring a new community and economic development director and assistant city manager. And I don't know if that is maybe with Matt first or who wants to sponsor that, but that I find is a big thing to discuss.
So it's a big ask. Just know it's also not 100% general fund. It's also with the RDA. We've talked about it a couple of years. In fact, it's in this current year's budget right now. Currently, right now, we're using Randy Sant. As everybody knows, we renegotiated his contract. Truth be known, if this were to happen, I can't anticipate that Randy Sant just completely goes away because his services are essential for CRAs and RDAs. When you do have this position in other cities, they still contract with a consultant like Randy to facilitate some of these. We have, the 2 upcoming ones potentially tomorrow night, or the 1 upcoming tomorrow night, the possibility of extending some other ones that haven't been triggered. So that I would say is essential for him to be there. One of the things that I relate back to is this position also goes into a lot of the administrative responsibilities with that department. When you look at the survey with the city a couple of years ago, actually a couple of years ago, I mean, probably 7, 8 years ago, you talk about the different services of the city and which ones people are satisfied with and which ones they are not. Some departments come out shining, and I think that's pretty universal between city to city. But if you look at our city in contrast to other cities, we were one of the very few that don't offer that position. That position is essential for when people come into the city to help bring that business here, as well as administrative functions with that department.
Well, you're spread about as thin as you can get with personnel, being a part of the economic development, community planning. I was always told as a coach, you can do one thing really well, you can do 2 things okay. You can't do really well at all things. You're doing an awesome job balancing that. But I look at the fact of, you're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, and are there things, and this is nothing against you, but are there things like personnel issues that could be taken care of? Or we hear a lot from planning and development department, that some oversight on that and different things that way, where a city of our size, we're running leaner and meaner than we should be.
I think another thing is the mayor does a great job to sponsor a lot of these meetings and stuff, and he picks up a lot of that pace too. As a part-time mayor, that's not always, you know, he's good to do it. I'm grateful for that, but he picks up a lot of that as well. And I mean, I appreciate the comments of saying I do a great job. There's only so much time in the day. I think if we're really satisfied with the way things are going and don't think we can improve, then there's that end of it too. But if we
From
feel
my
like we
standpoint, it'd
want-
be nothing against you, but I think it's a critical position because I think there's things that we could focus on that we're not, because you are spread so thin. So I don't ever want you to take that as a personal, but you know, things that we're having Randy do, Randy Sant do, our economic development could be doing, and Randy's a part-time person where there's things that need to be bird dogged and followed up on, that who knows when and if it's gonna get followed up and bird dogged.
So what are the critical things that this position would be needed? I mean, how much are we paying Randy Sant right now?
It's, you know, it really varies. We changed it from a monthly contract into an hourly contract. And so it's what we ask of him. We've obviously this last year been asking a lot more of him though. So that's just to plain answer that question, is about 60,000 a year.
And so we probably need some of his services to the tune of.
It kind of depends on what we want to do. I mean, if we're still talking CRAs and stuff, that's where he's essential for. I think he has a lot of great contacts that he could, you know, help us out with as well. But it's all on what we want out of him. And so with that being said, it could be, you know, as little as we want or as much as we want him to work.
What would specifically be able to be done very concretely? So we're probably talking 190,000 for the new developer, maybe another 20 or so. So what could concretely be done for the additional $160,000? What concrete specific goals, and how would we make up the difference for those goals that we are hoping to be accomplished?
I think that's one of my greatest concerns with it, because for a long time, the success of that position, it was defined as a movie theater or a hotel. And to me, that can't be the success of the position. You can't say that that's the only thing we can measure with it. But to say that there's not a really good contact when they come full-time into the city, not a good contact, that they're constantly going to these meetings and stuff. What we're missing, we don't know. But, you know, to say that if we pay this, we get a hotel or something, you can't really say that.
So how would we measure the success of this?
That becomes the difficulty. I think that's when it last went away, it was said that that position was costing over $1 million in the last so many years, and we don't have anything to show for it. And so that's actually why the council at that time chose to do away with it.
And so what would be different? You know, it's not going to change Roy demographics, and though it would be helpful in the city, it says that it's an economic development director. So I don't believe that the goal is that we just want an economic development director, but we want actual you know, like increased sales tax revenue or something like that. And so, but we're not going to have a change in our Roy demographics. You know, we're not going to be able to change specifically property owners selling. We're not going to be able to insist that someone come here because we want them to. So the other
No, but
things are
it's
nice, but
putting
how would we do that?
It's putting a plan together, because we're on public, but you look in the past and certain individuals called every business in the world and said, come to Roy. Well, what's your plan? Roy's a great place to come. No, you need somebody to work with a developer, work with a business owner, work with a property owner to say, how can we attract this business? Oh, look, we've got this empty property space. This property owner's interested in this. It's putting all that together. The problem is nobody singly has the time to do that. Matt doesn't, previous council members, even myself hasn't, even Randy hasn't. There's nothing pulling all that together. And then, one of our departments that we get a lot of concerns about is our planning department. And so working with planning and community development, working part of that. And then, there's things that's Matt's missing that he could restructure himself to better meet those needs. We talked about things that, how often do we say, we wish we could get this done, but we don't get it done.
Let me offer some insight. First thing is that to put everything in context. The city manager has been removed from office, fired because they didn't do their job. And the city council in the past specifically says, city manager, you got two functions. You will be the city manager and you will also be the community development director. And because they were not able to fulfill the community development director, they were removed. Bottom line. The hard part about this is the council's responsible to provide the revenue to the city. That's you. You could do that by taxes. You can certainly do it by going up there and offering, it says, I like to change the codes to incentivize business coming. You do that. You set the rates. If you want to double the entry into the Roy complex, you set that rate. But your responsibility is to define the revenue. It is Matt's responsibility to spend it.
And I do a good job at that, just so you know.
So the key is going to be is that how do you want to do this? You can surely tax the residents. You can certainly do that. And you can probably understand the impact if you tax them too much, what that impact will be on you as an elected official. So the question is going to be is how do you balance that? The strongest revenue generator in Roy City today is sales tax. And yet we know that sales tax is challenging because all you do is create the condition by which you bring business in. You don't bring businesses in, they choose that. So you have to create the environment by which they want to come. The question you have to ask is why do some municipalities today have multiple people standing in line to get into their city? Businesses. It's because they have an active economical development director function that's going after those businesses. I talked to my counterparts. I talked to the mayors. Some of them have two economical development directors, and they certainly are not bigger than us.
So on that, part-time or full-time, I mean, could the benefit be part-time, or do you think you wouldn't find?
Right now is kind of the part-time method, and we have somebody very skilled at that. And so with Randy Sand's contract right now, he's currently working a part-time shift for it.
And nothing against Randy, he does a great job, but there's a lot of things being missed, the things I talked about. I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you want to finish? Because I have one
No,
more
just
thought.
What is he enough, or is it another piece where he's doing a little bit of this and we can use him still, but then hire somebody that's going to do, because he's not doing your stuff. So do we hire someone to do that other part of the economic development?
I think the question, Matt, you have to answer would be is the function as an economical development director. The fact that it's a secondary function to maybe work with Matt in terms of some administrative responsibilities for city management, that's fine. I mean, but that's collateral duty. The focus has to be is to bring businesses in here and talk about redevelopment and development. And there's nobody doing that. Not even Randy Sant's doing that. As much as we'd like to do that, we certainly got the hotel study completed. It was a great study. It says Roy City is in fact prime for a hotel. The fact of the matter is there's no hotel in Roy City. There's nobody going to.
There's not a need.
I believe there's a strong need. What's happening, and this becomes part of the problem, is when UDOT clears the land, when it knocks the buildings down, and that's going to happen, then the question is, who's going to be responsible to go in there and find people to rebuild on that property? And more importantly, what to rebuild? My frustration, I think we got right now, is nobody is doing that.
Well, and who's bird dogging UDOT? Because if somebody's not watching what's going on, we're going to get a lot of stuff left on our doorstep for us to deal with.
Part-time or full-time? See, here's the challenge. It's not the part-time mayor's responsibility to deal with economic development. It's not the part-time mayor's responsibility to go up there and be chairman of the Economical Development Committee. That's not the function. We're only doing that because we're desperate here to try to find some solution. If you have not read anything that I have been sending, read this. I am concerned at this moment, okay, that in fact is we're not going to generate enough revenue in the sales tax revenue to compensate for the significant increase in salaries that we've already approved. And we're about to hit another one. And that's not even talking about the COLA that's coming or the merit that's coming. We haven't got to that conversation yet. There's not enough sales tax to compensate for that.
So how can we assure that now we're adding $200 or $860,000 to the current budget? And that sounds like a tax increase to me because I can't see that. I'd like to see where it's a little more direct correlation that we're gonna be able to pay for that and increase it above, because the potential and where we're at as a city, I'm having a hard time seeing that from the people I've talked to about businesses. So maybe you can help me with that.
Well, I think it comes where the source. The interesting part is we got $2 million of RDA funds. And I've been here 7 years, and I'm telling you right now is I'm still trying to figure out how to spend that. We hadn't even used the money that we collected to drive it back to what it's really designed to, which is redevelopment, to try to find some way to do that. And the reason why is because nobody's in charge. And I think Matt's point was to simply say to you is then take some of the money. Take some of the money that's already coming into the coffers and simply use that money to put somebody in charge. You got 3 or 4 years, use that as an investment. And then be wise in terms of they select a person who's competent to do the work. Matt alluded to an individual that was on the job. He got rid of it because there were some issues about whether or not they were productive. Well, trust me with this comment, okay? Just trust me with this comment. When I walked as a city council member, I heard mayor tell me I'm going to remove people because they're not doing enough about economical development. He said that to my face 3 times. And I said to him, I says, the problem is not the person. The problem is your zoning. You have put such a restriction in terms of what can. We could not put a modern building in downtown Roy because the way our zones were done, they were antiquated. And it wasn't until we changed the zoning that we opened the possibilities. Now you've got the zoning where it needs to be able to bring about change. Now put the right person in place to bring about that change. But trust me with this comment. He kept pushing the fact is we need to remove people and replace, but we needed to look at it more practically and simply says it was the laws, the zoning that restricted us, not the person. And as long as we kept with those old zoning philosophies, that's what restricted Roy. Nobody came to Roy, nobody. So I'm asking you to simply suggest this idea. You've done everything you needed to do. You've got the train station where it needs to be in compliance with the law. You got the downtown to be compliant with the law. You've got everything in place, but you got no one driving that train. And unless you're going to dump it on the city manager, the question is who's going to do it? And if you think a part-time contractor is the right answer, then you're mistaken on that as well. I'm saying is when I can.
You know what the definition of insanity is? If you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to get the same result.
Same thing. You've got to make an investment to get the right person in play. And if you're looking the way to pay for them, don't pay for them out of the O&M funds. Pay them out of the RDA funds.
That's why.
Okay, that was
my
my next
City
question.
manager and half economic development director, and you split it between the 2 funds. So you're not tanking one fund or the other.
Personally, I put the whole picking economic director's salary under RDA board.
We can't, can we do that by statute? Are we allowed to do that?
We are. It's only when he touches the other side, the general fund components, that you got to separate that.
There's a little bit of a split currently right now. This current fiscal year, it was 100% out of the RDA. This year, with that other association with administration, it has a split.
So obviously, we're not that big of a city to where, I mean, once it's all built out, like say in 5 years, is that a position?
Well,
Yeah, but that's what
I think
redevelopment is.
I think that's more of the challenge is redevelopment is much more difficult than just clean slate development.
And here's the key. You've got clear ground at the train station. As soon as the planning commission brings to this council the station area plan, which is the only limiting piece to this right now. Once the planning commission brings that to the council for final approval, then this train station is ready. And we have confirmation that UTA will put an RFP on the street and they will basically do something with that train
Well,
station.
who, like I said, who's babysitting UDOT? Because if we aren't watching that 100%, they're gonna do something that gets left on us. They're gonna put in a bridge over the trail that we're gonna have to maintain if we're not watching it. Or they're gonna put a great big park in that we have to maintain if we're not watching it. Somewhere along the line, somebody's gotta be watching that to make sure we just don't get dumped on.
There, I will tell you right now, and I've told Travis a couple of times, there's a 2.5 mile park coming at the end of 5600 when it's wide. And Travis, unless Matt, you choose it differently, somebody's got to maintain that park. That's an absolute fact. So the question is going to be is where we can come up the resources to do that. And remember, Ann, the key to this conversation is they're taking out all those buildings. They're not only just taking out houses, but they're taking out businesses. So the question is going to be is what do we do with that clean land when they take those properties? And by the way, you're going to lose sales tax and you're going to lose property tax.
So this person could help.
He
when
has
he's
to, he or
relocating.
she has to figure out
And
how
yes
we're
or
going to
no.
bridge this that's coming and figure out how we're going to get through that. Because if you think a part-time mayor, or if you think it's just one of the other duties you're going to throw on this guy over here so he can go home at 7 o'clock at night, it ain't going to happen.
So we'd
and
have
yet-
to have someone lead them in the right direction and tell them.
Has to be part of those meetings, has to be doing the things that I'm doing, the same thing that Matt's doing, the same thing that in fact, in this case, Randy's doing. Somebody has to be in charge. The question is who, and more importantly, let me just make this clear again. Property tax is stable. You're now having a difficult conversation about raising property tax. Franchise tax is dropping. Okay, look at the numbers. I'm going to help that out, Matt. I'm going to take my home phone out. So you're not going to get my home phone in that franchise tax. And the fact of the matter is the only other major funding source for Roy City is sales tax. And it is your responsibility as council to get the revenue into the city. So the question is, which one of you? Which one of us in this room is going to be working on getting sales tax increases to pay for everything you're talking about here? Because if you didn't listen to what Brandon just said, and I want to repeat what he just said, there's $100 million infrastructure bill that nobody wants to talk about. And we're going to have to deal with that animal sometime. And if we don't deal with that $100 million at some point, we're in trouble.
Well, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but if I put any more hours into the work I'm doing for the city, I might as well come to work for the city full time.
Exactly.
I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with council members and mayors from other cities, and they can't believe what we do with the resources we have. I've had a couple of mayors say, you're more involved in so many things that our council doesn't even get involved in because we have employees to do it. And I'm not complaining. I love doing it, but it's not a full, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job for me.
Fire truck, Joe. You're not basically up there arresting anybody. You know where most of your attention is? To try to build an economic base to this city by which it can be sustained. That's what you do. Diane, that's what you've been doing. And there's a council member here isn't thinking about how we can raise the revenues so that we don't basically get rid of our people. But trust me with this comment, you mess with that cotton picking recreation center, that complex, it's $700 some odd thousand. $524,000 of that is employees. If you expect to save money, then you better darn well get rid of all those employees when you make that decision. Because if your intent would be is to simply says, well, we'll just scatter them somewhere else, you've missed the opportunity to get the monies you need. So it's taking on the issues that you got to take on, which means if you want to keep working those people, then you better find better revenue to increase it. You've got to increase the revenue stream, and that is your responsibility. So tell us how you want to do that. And that's not an easy question, because if all you're going to do is simply says, I'm going to do it on the backs of the residents, and all I'm gonna do is keep raising property taxes to compensate, we're all in trouble.
Right.
We're all in trouble. So
My
Diane,
vote's
I
to
threw a
leave
lot
the
of stuff
position
at
in.
you, but just recognize the fact is, this one's a tough one. The fact of the matter is, this council approved, not all of you, but this council approved to hire a full-time director last year. And we didn't do it.
So then my next comment is that certainly I think it's reasonable to do the part-time and seasonal staff increase, but I do not feel that, I think the mayor and council, we're kind of a volunteer service oriented, and I would propose that we don't raise the mayor and council as part of that. I believe that we should stay where we're at. It's not a big savings or amount, but I do believe that that is something we could at least contribute to a little bit. So that's my proposal there.
No, that's a good comment. And the other councils facing the very same situation, Diane said the same thing. And you're right. The bottom line is that the issue has to be is if the council believes that it's not worth us adding to the financial burden, then we're in a good spot to simply agree, you know? And council, that's your choice. That's your choice. But you will not be the first one. I've been at this thing now 6 years, 7 years. And this is probably, I think, the third or fourth times I've heard that very words, and they're good words. And we've never raised the council pay I've never seen a raise, so it just is what it is. But it's the right gesture, given the nature of what we're in, and it probably is the right thing to do if in fact it's helped save other people to keep their jobs. But that's your choice.
Are we the only city that doesn't have the economic,
I know of no city doesn't have
doesn't
one.
have one?
Even the 9,000 people in Riverdale, I think has 2.
And just for quick clarification, was that Community and Economic Development Director / Assistant City Manager one position or 2?
One position.
One position. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
So obviously, only if you needed him to do something for you, you would just help that person along.
Yeah,
then-
and truth be known, if you were to take the assistant city manager portion out of it, the wage portion wouldn't change much. It's kind of a way to get good people in. That's a good thing that somebody would want to do. So.
Go
Well,
ahead, Diane, you had a thing.
I think those are the main concerns I have about the current budget, those two
Good comment.
items there.
Anything else in terms of the document itself? Do you have any issues with what's in the document? Because in my opinion, unless you tell me otherwise, council, this is the crux of the hard decision. This is what's going to keep you up at night. And this is what I think you need to focus on. Randy, do you have anything on the document?
Yeah, real quick. Are we passing along the 9% increase in health insurance premiums, or are we eating that?
It's a little bit of a mix. We do a ratio, so the employees do take an increase. We have changed some of our plans, and so we're on the Select Med plan. We're adding a value plan that's a little cheaper that the employees can go to. But yes, to answer your question, it's a mix between both.
Thanks.
And in the budget, there's I think you already seen it, there's a 15% water rate increase and 11% solid waste increase. That's also in the budget.
Those are just pass-throughs though.
It's a pass-through, right? But remember, at the end of the day, it's what the residents will incur as a result of when you pass the budget.
we can't raise taxes because everything's gone up.
Joe,
Would you like me
we
to
can
send that?
send that to you.
I paid $72 to fill my car up.
In the meeting earlier, I spent time taking all these notes, 3 pages, and he's like, you just want me to send you the presentation? So, yes, thank you. I mean, we're definitely, so we've talked in the past about doing a truth and taxation and freezing our tax rate. When and where and how do we do that?
It's a little bit of a process. It delays the budget until August to do that because we have to do a bunch of public noticing and things. So we get the rate mid-June, and then from that rate, you decide where you want to do the tax increase and then hold the public hearings and things to do it in August. So there's just a process.
So if you're freezing your rate, which I've not figured out why that's not, there was legislation that went through, but I don't think that ever, it was proposed, but I don't think it ever went through.
Didn't.
And by the way, if you look at it, Joe, from that perspective, and I'm just gonna share, I'll share just a little bit of data for you, just so you can kind of understand when Joe says freezing it. Clearfield, man, they're the champions. I would dare say since 2012, they basically have froze their rates 8 times. And all that means is that the natural, and Amber talked to this a little bit, the natural quality, if you don't change the rate drops proportionally. But you as a council and the council in Clearfield, in fact, Clearfield, Fruit Heights, Kaysville, Syracuse, West Point, interesting enough, West Point's done it, North Ogden, and South Ogden all have froze those rates in the past. And it just simply says as part of a truth in taxation, you're not talking about a rate increase, you're just simply not allowing it to self-adjust. And so you lock it. And when you look at Clearfield from 2012 to 2016, they locked theirs every year. Boom, boom. When I asked the question in a meeting, mayor's meeting down at the conference, I asked the question to the mayors in there, how many mayors this year are planning to have a property tax increase? 3/4 of all the mayors in that room raised their hands, said they're planning to have a property tax.
Well, it only goes to reason that cost of business is more expensive. You know, we're paying more money in fuel, we're paying more money in wages.
Same.
It's either we do something or we cut services.
That's the choice.
So where are we at in regards to the bubble of the crisis that occurred with the 37% increase that, you know, made everyone go bonkers and crazy? So, you know, where are we at in regard to something like that? You know, trying to stay ahead of things a little bit. Because it's more of a balancing. I got the impression that was more of a balancing, settling.
Yeah, you look at how many times she had it on her first presentation, how many times taxes have been increased. And I'm not proposing a tax increase, but I think freezing the rate to where your rate stays consistent makes more sense, because otherwise we're spending more every year because cost of services, but we're collecting less.
Joe, I don't disagree, but I think Amber can run the numbers. And I don't think the numbers in freezing that rate is going to get you to, in this case, $1.4 million in revenue.
It won't, but I mean, if we don't start doing something like that every year, just a freeze the rate and.
So can you elucidate on
5
the
years
whole
from now, it's gonna come along and do another 40% tax increase.
right? So can you?
That's what got us into trouble to start with, is instead of doing little minor adjustments periodically, yearly, every 2 years, they waited and did it all at once.
So do you fix the lock? Okay, so just so anybody that watches this after, can somebody explain like how the lock works? Do we say we fix it to whatever year-over-year GDP growth is? Do we fix it to what is the basis for setting the lock? So that way we don't get into a pay the piper 10 years down the road scenario like we did before.
Yeah, to try to answer both of the questions, we don't know, like we know what our current tax rate is. We don't know what the new tax rate is until mid-June. So we don't know what it's going to be raised to if we currently fix it. The same process needs to take place though, regardless of raising it twofold to raising it just a little tiny bit, not even to the current rate. The same process needs to take place. So it's the same,
then,
you know, and
is that
what's that, Randy?
Is that a truth in taxation? Do we have to do a truth in taxation?
Yes, correct. Even to hold that rate, or even to be less than holding the rate, you still have to go through that same process.
So you talked about that would punt the budget into another month or two. Can we legally do that?
That's the way to legally do it. Yes, you have to do that way.
And in this budget, there's an element
Would that give us enough time to also send out surveys and kind of just
We
at least
could-
get some feedback.
We could be precedent, depending on their timeline.
Let me see if I understand what your question is, Randy. You're saying is, do we have enough time? Do we have enough time to put a survey out there to determine whether or not the population is in fact supportive of a property tax increase?
Yes, specific to at least police and fire, would be the bare minimum that I would be comfortable with. And then we didn't get down to the,
Well, I think it's gotta be multi, you know?
yeah,
Do they support a tax increase? And these are the different things. Do you want to shut the complex down? Do you want to
right,
hire more police officers? Do you want to put another ambulance on the road?
right.
I think you've got to ask some frank questions because the wells there's no more water in the well.
Right.
So we either got to quit pulling as much water out of the well or replenish the well with some more water.
To hinge that decision on a survey, it would be, I can't promise that we would get that back. We would be cutting it pretty close. The last time we did the survey.
So I know we went to like the way super expensive, well, I can't remember what they're called. What if we just did a simple out on our own Facebook page kind of thing, just like gauge the broad sentiment of the community. And we can do like a $20 Survey Monkey account and put it on our Roy City Facebook page. Yeah.
What our department heads propose. I see a great group of them back there. Where's the lottery?
Have a dog in there.
The only thing I would say is obviously these are very important questions. And if you're gonna ask questions that are gonna determine something like this, it's critical you ask the right question. I mean, and I'm not smart enough to necessarily blanket statement what that right question is. So if that would kind of be my take on it, is we have to make sure
You're smart enough.
if you're asking something that critical, what the right questions are.
You pointed to yourself, so I was trying to figure out where.
I just wanted to comment on this. Back when we had that 37% tax increase, everybody was up in arms, and the council at that time said, every year we're going to do truth in taxation, so we don't run into that situation. And it hasn't happened yet. So it's something for the council to decide if they want to do that and freeze the rate. So I just want.
I mean, that's probably the least I would propose is
Yeah,
doing truth and taxation and freeze the rate so we're consistent. Maybe not increase the percentage, but freeze the rate.
Otherwise,
Still going to be hard to sell, but
just like you were saying, Joe, we're either going to have to, cut back and have fewer services. I mean, our costs keep going up every year to run business here. So an economic development somewhere down the road, that may happen, but that's not going to happen for a few years. So.
the lottery bucket, I'm here to tell you. Sumo suits, we can put sumo suits on, see who the winner is. Hey, we got to get creative. I don't know. Arm wrestling.
Maybe to go back to what Randy was talking about, the big difference is basically if you agree with the statistics behind these professional companies or not. If you do a Facebook poll, you're going to get a biased.
Well, I mean, if you gate it based upon you have to provide your address and whether you are a citizen of Roy, we could immediately drop anybody out that doesn't meet those criteria. So you can geotag it. You can,
I'll probably be voted off the island for saying this, but I'm not going to put much weight in a Facebook poll. I
Just want to be a statistically accurate sample.
right,
There's
and
a lot of good
I
people on Facebook, but
agree. But here's the thing is going back to whatever the company that we hired, I wasn't part of the statistical group and I'm now a sitting city council member. So my opinion was not weighed when that was taken. And again, if I recall correctly, it was less than I think it was like 1,000 something people that were surveyed of the 12,000 homes within. So I don't believe the broader, I mean, sure, statistic, again, I've said this in another city council meeting, so I won't repeat it because y'all made fun of me before, but there's lies and then there's other lies and then there's statistics. So again,
That's
I'm
where I
not,
say it's if you believe it or not, like, because it's a relatively low sample.
I agree,
correct.
but. correct me-
And with time being of the essence, we kind of need to lean into just kind of using whatever we can get out there. Again, we're not saying this is going to ultimately make the decision, but it at least allows us to gauge the sentiment of our constituency.
Okay, and so the council, you have to make a tough choice. Are you gonna look at the survey as being the Kevlar to give you an argument that simply says, I made a decision because of the outcome of a survey? Because that's all I'm hearing here.
I believe that would be helpful for several of the decisions that will be coming up. We may be able to put off some of these decisions, but they're going to be facing us soon. So at some point in time, I think it'd be nice to have that input. I think it'd be nice to let the citizens know what's coming up. Will it be the crux of whether or not we freeze property taxes? I'm not sure that that's the crux, but for future decisions.
Okay, go back a slide. I want to make sure you understand what we're talking about. That one right there. If you just took the police officers, I'm just talking police officers and the fire department, not talking about the increase in 315,000 for the apparatus. You're talking roughly a 36%, 37% property tax increase. That what you want?
So close to $100 a year, so.
People won't look at that part of it. They'll look at that number.
It's the percentages.
It's a
And
percentage.
as we don't raise it, the lower that property tax rate goes, the harder it is, the higher increase you need to get it back up.
So that's the number you got to target. If you include that one and the bottom one, which is trying to get some stability in the complex, so you got something that's going to be usable. You can look at the number. The number is a pretty healthy number. Are you ready to go to a truth and taxation on those numbers? Because that's the issue. That's what it's going to come down with. And I'm going to tell you, and you can quote me, I've stood in front of a truth and taxation meeting, and I had those people, Ann, who basically walked up to me, looked me in the face. I'm not sure what they were looking at the other people, and looked me in the face and simply says, you're forcing me to make a choice whether I'm going to be able to buy medicine or food or pay my property tax, keep my house. That's how it was presented, and you're going to have that conversation. So when you basically look at the number, it's only $100, okay? I'm just saying, yes, look at the number and recognize the fact is you're going to have some people who are going to basically give you a real, no kidding, serious story, and you're going to have to make a decision based on that. But there's the number.
They'll come with pitchforks and torches. There's no doubt about it.
Then the question is it, in my opinion, Amber, you may have some better insight, but locking the rate, and I can tell you exactly what the rate is, I don't think you're going to get anywhere near generating $600,000.
It's a start.
I agree. So the question's going to be then is that if you do come out of that and you simply says, yes, we'll freeze it. And I'm telling you, Clearfield froze it for 6 years straight. They just froze it. Every truth and taxation for 6 years, they kept it the same. Then they generate revenue. The concern I've got is after you heard the testimony of the department heads, I don't think they can wait 6 years for you to generate enough money to be able to come up with 1.8, 1.4, $1.6 million. I don't think it's going to happen in 6 years,
And
not
so
on this means.
that's why you believe that, or you're proposing the economic development director position, put a little money in, but we'll be able to make up the difference. I mean, that's what I'm asking.
I think it's all part of the equation.
Okay.
I mean, do you think that there's that much difference that can be made up in that? I mean, with
Diana,
what you've researched, I'm wondering.
Okay. You opened the door.
I mean, do you think that there's that much difference?
Here's my point, and I'll just tell it the way it is because it's kind of guy I am. I asked this council back on January 4th not to give away $750,000 in back pay. $750,000 in back pay. You made a decision, we live with the decision, but I ask you not. I will tell you, Matt and I had a conversation last year that talked to this very issue. Doing a truth in taxation and locking the rate. Because we think that if we were to do that, okay, year after year, we can build a little bit more each year to help compensate, if nothing else, for the cost of living, the COLAs and those other things. That's what our plan was. It kind of got out of the border, for a better word, because it's changed. But the fact of the matter is that was our going in strategy. The challenge we have is we knew then, as we know now, because I still got the chief's report, and he makes an excellent argument. I've read this thing over and over again. If you have not read it, read page 15 to 20. He is in trouble. And you don't have to go too far to look at Matt and ask Matt, how much use or lose leave do you give back to the city every year?
Enough.
He doesn't have enough time off the job because he has to be here in order for him to do that. So he's giving back all that annual leave that he's earning. And I guess he's not alone. And then when that chief basically said to us in that meeting, he says, I don't have enough people that I can take them off the watch so they can get training. That shook me to the core, and it's in his document. Council, we got a tough problem here, and it's not an easy fix. We're going to burn our people out. We're going to burn them out if we don't come up with a solution. Personally, my recommendation was don't fill the economic development community director. That's $189,000 you could save. Hold off a year. I can give you 20 reasons why we should do that. It irks me to the core because I've been fighting this issue for so long. Andy will tell you, him and I talked 3 years ago. We got to get the attorney out of economic development. We have to do that. There are so many issues on the attorney. We're compounding his ability. Have you talked to him recently when he told you, if I can stay home, I can really get things done. But when he comes to work, he's carrying 2 mantles. The city attorney mantle, and he has to carry the economical development committee, not because he's got there getting business, but because he has to deal with all of the elements that are associated with the business he owns. He can't keep doing that.
We can't keep kicking that position down the road, in my opinion.
That's what we've been doing.
I know,
At this
that's why I
point-
say I would vote right now to not eliminate that position.
Well, I'm just saying is that if I was king for a day, I got a list of things that I would basically take out to try to get to the bottom line that says, we got to help our people. And here's the bottom line. I'll give you my thoughts. You choose which part of it you want to basically chew on. First, get rid of the Economical Development Committee. I would question why police needs 3 more administrative vehicles for $135,000. I would question why Public Works needs 2 more vehicles for $100,000. Why the community development truck is needed for $50,000, and why the Parks and Rec could not drive their current vehicles and have to replace them for $100,000. Those few comments right there get you to almost to $500,000. I would definitely go up and take it. Well, I'm not going to get into that. We got to deal with the other piece of this. We got a COLA issue coming at us, and we got a merit issue. We hadn't even talked about that. You just read in the paper, and this is going to make it hard on the chief, okay? The Chief Golden's got a 14% increase in Ogden. His residents going after that. I guarantee you the county is going to come in right after that, and they're going to raise their rates. They're going to have between now and January. So they're going to try to keep their police officers and their fire that. We're going to be chasing this salary war, okay, for months and months until the state legislation does something about it. And I don't know what that's going to be. Personally, I don't have a clue. But here's the bottom line it's going to be. We have set a priority to retain our people. We set a priority, and retaining is not just paying them the salary. It's about making sure they don't get burned out. And right now, we don't have enough resources to pay to basically meet the demands. So council, decide what you don't want them to do anymore. Maybe that's a discussion. Maybe the fact of the matter is that we just simply said we're not gonna do that. But here's the interesting part. And I'm gonna go back to the document, which you may not have read, but I'm gonna point it out to you if you did read it. This shook me again to the core. Chief, if your numbers were accurate, in 2014, we had 9,000 traffic stops. Last year, we had 2,100. We don't have enough people to basically do the traffic stops because they're doing other things they have to do. And he said it yourself, crime is going up. So we've got people speeding in our running stop signs, running thing that we normally would have captured, and we are not capturing them today. 7,000 a year? My heavens, what the heck is happening here? This is the reality. So if we set up aside the emotion and look at the data, that's what we got to focus on. The data. And it's painting a tough picture for all of us. So
On the same token, you're talking about burning out people in your first comment, which you're going back and forth, Mayor, because I've heard you argue for the Economic Development Director position, and I've heard you argue against it, both in this meeting and outside of this meeting.
Joe, I was not going to say a word until Diane asked the question, but here's the reason for my argument. I have little faith that the Planning Commission is going to bring to this organization within a year a stationary plan. My heavens, I've got people complaining to me right now that simply says, when are you going to basically release so I can basically use my strip in front? And I says, we cannot do anything until the Planning Commission sends it to you and you approve it or don't approve it. And if you approve it, then every resident who wants to now strip their strip can do that. But until that decision is done, it ain't going to happen by law. Can't do it. So that's on hold until they're done. The other part of the conversation is, if we don't get a stationary plan, you can't do a thing for that entire train station. I don't expect to see
No,
that. For
we have a
years.
whole downtown thing that we're not even working because nobody has the time to work it.
I agree.
We've got a whole UDOT construction coming down 5,600
I know.
that nobody's gonna have time to work it.
And right now, nobody's going to basically be doing a lot of downtown work right now in large part because until UDOT provides us the plan, and I've been waiting for that plan. I called a meeting with Matt how many times now? At least in the last 4 or 5 months, I've called 3 meetings and sat down with them and asked them, and they're no further along than I thought. My concern would be is, I don't know what they're going to do, but here's what I do know. In 3 years from now, they're done. And when 3 years from now they're done, they're going to clear the landscape of downtown Roy, and the areas is going to be impacted, and we'll figure out what they got. But here's the point. We heard the UDOT contractor says, I want to save 3 or 4 of those businesses. He said, I'm going to do everything I can to save them. And we're saying, how are you going to do that?
But who's bird dogging that on our side? Nobody.
You see the problem.
You
Our
gonna
time.
break the back of the city manager? You gonna break the back of the city attorney? We've already broke their backs.
I agree. This thing's just got trouble all over it because all I'm trying to do is basically keep us from basically going into trouble. Trouble meaning is we can't sustain what we got. And irregardless, we basically says that the picture's a little bit rosy. Council, I looked at back a year and a half, 2 years, and looked at where our sales tax revenue is, and I looked forward. I told you that even the state says that the surge in sales taxes related directly to the fact is the federal government crammed a whole lot of money into the economy. It paid people more money just not to be employed. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. And all that money, we know personally, people who went out and bought a brand new Suburban. I still can't imagine.
Must have had a lot of kids.
They have a lot of kids. And the fact of the matter is they spent the money. That's all dried up. It's gone. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to baseline sales tax, and sales tax revenue is going to basically stabilize. It's not going to grow 120,000. Well, it's actually about 120,000 a month. So it's going to level off. And there's evidence suggesting that. We'll know that number in about 2 months, whether or not it stabilizes. Well, all I'm saying to you would be is sales tax is stabilizing. Property tax, unless you do something to it, is going to stabilize. And I'm taking my phone out, so your franchise tax is going to drop. Probably about a nickel, but it's going to drop.
If we raise taxes, I'm getting rid of my phone number. I'll unpublicize it because I won't have one. But I will say, and God bless us all, as much as I love Travis and Parks and Rec, I could no more gut spending $1.1 million on the complex on top of losing almost $500,000 a year. That is not, in my opinion, a core competency of the city, but some of this other stuff that we're looking at throwing out the window is.
I'm just saying to you, Joe, my concern's going to be is this is a time that we have to step up and we have to take on the tough issues. And personally, the survey will help you, I'm sure. But man alive, I don't know how you ask the questions to figure out whether or not I don't know how you ask the questions to figure out what their position is. You know the issues. I think Amber has provided us a clear picture. This is what we face. And by the way, so there's no confusion here, council. You can read my lips on this one. I don't have a vote in this. They will hold the mayor responsible for this decision. Irregardless of what you do, they will hold the mayor responsible.
At least you're getting rid of your home phone number.
That's why I'm getting rid of my home phone. I get enough complaints on a bunch of other stuff. This is just one more to the list. So I say, rattle this one through. These are issues. You've got ample information in front of you. Best I can tell, unless Diane wants to bring the conversation back or Randy wants to, this document we have in front of us is pretty sound. It's what we do with this that's going to basically deal whether we sleep at night. This is the tough one. We got to figure out what we want to do with this. And if you want to take a few vehicles out of the game and delay those a year so you can do something here, if you want to tell Chief Golden, Chief, appreciate the input, but the bottom line is we're only going to give you 3 and not 9. If you want to tell the other chief, thanks, Chief, but I'm only going to give you 3 instead of the 5, then that's the hard conversation you got to have. And then you just pray every day that Travis doesn't blow a boiler, because if he blows a boiler, here's the bottom line with that. Half of his people that go there today won't go there. They just won't go. And if they don't go there, where's his revenue going to be coming from? So.
I mean, we're one of the few cities around us that have 2 major water features.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to narrow it down to 1.
Well, my recommendation is get with John. Let's find out when John's planned to take Roy High School down and rebuild. If he can give you a date.
Not for a long
10
time,
years.
Well,
because we spent a brand new auditorium in, it was $10 million or something. So,
the school's it's older than dust. You know where it's at.
yeah,
It's got to be replaced soon.
it's gonna be a long ways. Because the new
Longer
roof
than that.
they just put on and the new auditorium, they just sunk all that money into.
Isn't it 50 years old right now?
1966 is the first
So-
graduating class. So,
I was in a meeting recently, but they said 10 years before they'll even,
In 10 years from now, the
yeah,
complex
it's-
goes away for
it's
sure.
56 years old,
Unless this council does something between now and then.
56.
To go into some of the other cuts with vehicles, a lot of those vehicles will actually, every one of them are the replacement plan. So there's a revenue and expenses.
So why can't we show that?
So the revenue will be budgeted when we get that money in there. And so it's basically a wash for the.
So I fight this at work and we fight it with the sewer board. Can you not just budget the difference?
No, because of accounting standards. Unfortunately, we're nerds.
Well, I can't think, we don't have hundreds of accountants where I work, and
Yeah.
is it a government thing that's the case? Because the problem is you're showing the expense, but you're not showing the income, where the income will actually offset the expense.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
part of it,
So budget on a project budget.
so last year, you guys decided to move all the capital stuff to the capital projects fund instead of funding it out of the general fund, which means we have to transfer money to the capital projects fund every year to pay for these things. So what we had decided to do was anything we sell during that year, we record as revenue to pay for the next year's purchases, so that we know we have the revenue before we spend the money. We can't do that this year because we just decided to do it.
Yeah, and we're also not selling a lot of the vehicles because we're not getting any of the vehicles in.
So we didn't want to budget for the revenue because we didn't know for sure we were going to get it. But yes, you have to budget for the revenue and you have to budget for the expense. You can't just budget. For
So
the
at
net.
the very end of the day, they're a wash. We sell, we buy, they should mix.
You just don't see it in this
This
document.
document because of the delay and different things and changing where we purchase the vehicles from.
I mean, from my professional standpoint, I wouldn't get rid of vehicle replacements because
So right now,
problem's not going away in the future. And so
the last vehicle, so we did get 2 of them in and we did make quite a bit of money on them, so. But
you're gonna
it's also
continue-
part of.
you're
the
gonna
environment
continue
that's
for the
going on.
next 18 months to 2 years because meeting with manufacturers, this problem's not going away. Computer chips are coming back, but everything that's going on in Ukraine and all that, and the materials and stuff that come out of there, this vehicle shortage problem's not going away anytime soon.
So I hear that you have the bare bones, everything is bare bones except for this new position and the salary increases, right? Everything is as bare bones it can be. And that's why the others are on the ask.
Yes, so, right, so you've got the fire, parks and rec and Roy Days. Those were the 3 that asked the biggest above their current year budgets. And that's kind of where I get concerned because they're telling me that's what they need to function. And I think Craig can speak to that for sure on his side of it, which is mostly coming from inflation and fuel and things like that. So that part concerns me more than the rest of it, which is kind of where, Matt mentioned this, but when you do freeze that tax rate, so as property values goes up, the tax rate keeps going down. And he just mentioned, I don't know if you caught it, but he said, as that tax rate goes down, and then you try to increase the tax rate, you have bigger percentages because the tax rate's so small. So even if you just freeze it to where it's at, it helps that percentage wise.
That's why I'd say at a minimum, I'd freeze the tax rate.
But we've also talked with the utility enterprise funds that we have the flow through of fees being charged. So we have an 11% with waste management because of the CPI index. You take these type of increases and when it's somebody else, we do the increase because it's that flow through, but when it's the city, we're not. And so we're coming up with creative ways to work around this. But when we do these creative ways, we're also hurting ourselves because we're just pushing that off. That 37% tax increase, you did mention it earlier. That was 100% wages for employees. When the council did increase that, it was just like kind of what we did at the first of the year, and that was because of the sales tax. And so it just kind of
How much
pushed.
revenue?
Back at the 37%, it was a right under 800,000.
Well, I don't know that we actually have the money to have this economic development director. We have so many other things that are really critical and Mayor brings up some good points. It'd be nice, but we're still in limbo on several areas where that position could be very helpful for us.
Well, and don't we have 2 million sitting in the RDA that would fund that headcount if we decided to go for it?
I would fund half of it out of the
So right now it
RDA.
is split
Under
between
the-
in the general
Okay.
fund. So if it is decided to cut that out, that full 200,000 does not come right back into the general fund. It's only about 100 or 30,000 that would come back.
Mhm.
I would not vote to eliminate that position.
Well, council, you need to kind of decide where we go from here. Everything I'm hearing from you, this is the issue. So do you want to reconvene one more meeting before we have to take this on and for a vote? So that you can flush through this, ask more questions, sit down with the department heads? Because everything I'm hearing is this is the issue right here. How do we fund this?
When,
Thing on the capital projects, like the trucks and as those are cut out, that's in the capital projects fund. So they wouldn't come back into the general fund. It would just be used for other capital projects. So I do have the 1.1 million capital not included that was asked for is this right here. The people have asked to be funded out of that capital projects that we chose not to and chose other things. So was, things are decided to be cut out of capital, they would be replaced with other capital, not go back to the general fund.
And if we do see a priority that, when, like I said, back when we were doing the budget, we were looking at like trying to keep things as is. But when we were talking about the new things, we're trying to separate, and I was trying to separate the wants from the needs. And this right here, if there are line items in there that we feel that we could or should be doing, we have the money to be doing it. We are pretty good with our general fund balance. We have money left over into our capital projects fund, but we're also trying to conserve for future years.
So, I mean, as long as I've been on the council and 100 years before, we've lived with our beautiful council chambers. I probably wouldn't dump 150,000 into it right now. This might not be popular, but I wouldn't put $130,000 into xeriscaping either.
There is a list in your budget document on page 57 of what we did propose for capital this year.
We get a copy of this because this has more detail than what we
I
have.
did email it out to you.
Thank you.
And after this slide, everything's just the same as the presentation I already did, but the first part was new.
Council, what do you want to do?
So when is the deadline for truth and taxation for freezing? Or I guess it doesn't matter whether we freeze or whether we increase, right? The same step process.
So we need to adopt at least a tentative budget by the last meeting in June, which is the 21st. So we would either adopt a final budget, or if you'd like to do the truth and taxation, we would adopt a tentative that allows us to keep operating. And then we would go through the notification process for July and August. And the final budget needs to be, the last date is September 1st. So it would be whatever the last meeting is in August that we would do.
And can you just give us an idea of what freezing the tax rate would be? I know it's not going to be exact till June, but maybe you could just give us a general idea, you know, is that like $100,000?
I don't think I can do that until they release the tax, the
Because we don't
property
know what
values.
Should
Oh, yeah.
And I believe, yeah, June 8th is when that will come out, and I could give that to you then. So you'd have it before the June 21st meeting.
You want to try to sneak after you get that number, sneak in one more workshop, or do you feel like you'll be ready to go right into a council meeting and go for a vote?
I think it'd be nice to discuss it. We've got a lot on the plate.
You okay with that? Randy, can you hear me?
Yeah, completely. I can hear you. I'm in favor of talking it through after we get the June 8th numbers.
Yeah, you okay with that? Sophie? Joe? Okay, here's what I think we got. Let's get the number, Amber. Let them know if they freeze the rate, what we can expect in terms of that. And give that and Brittany, just set another meeting, a workshop. We'll focus on that. It sounds like the council's leaning towards that. They need to know what the number is. And then from that, we'll flush out how much that's going to help cover some of the expenses that I think we've seen here.
I believe that we do have some council members out the week of the 6th through the 10th. So that would leave us the week before the council meeting on the 31st, so the 13th through the 17th.
Joe?
June?
There's
Sorry,
only one
did I say
comment
June?
that's been said
Yeah,
about
June.
keeping
June.
the community director out. So it stays in unless it comes out in that work session, okay, going in. Is there anything else?
I would like to see, I would love to see 9 new officers and 5 officers and 9 firefighters. Can we get that number down to 2 and 2 or 2, 3 and 3? I don't know how they have to do their numbers. Can we see those numbers?
Just taking those requirements and see if we can reduce those going into this budget, okay. Matt, then if you
I think
could,
Chief Golden said that he could get by with a minimum of 3 to staff another.
Ambulance, yeah.
3 per shift, so 2 would give me 1 ambulance, 2 per shift, so that'd be 6.
Per shift is-
6.
Oh, when you said 3, I thought you meant 3 total.
Yeah, 3 shifts,
To
2 per.
allow a leave, 2.65, I think is the ratio, so it's 3.
okay, so come with a number that talks about 6 firefighters. Chief, what do you think you can do? Gwen, what do you think you can do from the 5?
Wait, the 5th?
We're operating at a standard that's 15 years old. If to be where we were 15 years ago, I need 5. All it will do is, again, kick the can down the curb. The other issue is while it would alleviate a minimum staffing problem on one crew, it won't alleviate that standard on another crew. And thereby you're gonna have opportunities for people to go to training and vacation that aren't gonna be afforded to others. And then you're gonna have that conflict between staff.
Can you also, Chief, can you go through and actually try to determine what the potential decrease in overtime costs would be? Because that would be a good number to kind of roll into it as well.
So that's a good question. I
know that's kind of hard.
I did not budget a decrease in overtime because I don't know what it looks like, but I didn't ask for an increase in overtime either. So I was really reluctant to decrease because simply I don't have any data to speculate on what that number looks like. But
Fair
the
enough.
hope is that we can look at the overtime that we've been spending and it would not increase because we have increased staffing and hopefully that goes down. But what that looks like, I don't know because I don't have any historical data to even look at to make an assumption.
Fair enough. Okay, thanks.
To your question, Sophie, 6 and 5, that's what I heard. So we got the 5, just if you can run a number and let us know what the 6 firefighters would be. And then let's bring that to that meeting sometime after the 8th.
So once you hire a policeman, how long before they're trained and they're on the job?
So if we hire laterals, we can actually have them working on their own within a couple of weeks of their
I
hiring.
mean, from another department, another city?
But if it's a new recruit just out of the academy, they're about 14 weeks if they don't have any problems.
So what if we hired a couple now and looked at it again in December or in January to see if the revenue comes through higher than what's anticipated and we could pick some up mid-year? Is it an all or nothing now?
Well, it's not an all or nothing. It just becomes a management issue. And again, we're gonna have training and leave opportunities that are gonna be available for some and not for others. You're gonna have some crews that are gonna be operating with 3 and you're gonna have other crews that are operating with 6. And
I'm just afraid if it comes down to all or nothing that it's.
I'm not saying it's all or nothing, but here's what I'm gonna tell you. I didn't come in here asking for the moon, hoping to get moon dust, right?
I get it.
5 is where we're at. That's the number. That's, for me, that's the bare minimum. And that's what I saw is what do we need to get to provide a service we should provide? I get emails from all of you. Come to this event, come to that event. What are we doing about speeding? We're not doing anything proactive. If we're doing anything proactive, it's administrators that are going out and doing it so they don't have to ask the line guys to come out and do it for us. And they don't have time to be proactive because they're responding call to call to call to call. And so that is a problem that happens on every shift, right? And so again, when we think about 5 guys, we're saying, yeah, that's 5 guys, but that is one additional guy for a 24-hour period. And that moves our staffing from, I think it was 0.4 that we have now to 0.45, which is where we were 15 years ago. Chief Wyndham asked for 2 people in 2012 and he didn't get them. And in 2012, we were operating at a standard set in 2007. I'll go back to the conversation I had with the mayor and another council member. What's the problem? What's the solution? This is the solution I'm offering because I think that's what we need to do. And when you look at my budget, I haven't added anything else in there, and I'm confident we can work the vehicle issue out. And so that was what I was willing to do instead of just coming in asking for more cars. So we looked at it line item by line item. I'm worried about fuel costs. But I tried offsetting the officer costs by saying we could get 5 new officers. I don't need 5 new cars. So I tried bringing that cost down as much as I could because I'm more concerned about the staffing than I am the vehicles.
Okay, you okay?
No, but what does it give me?
Diane?
I'm gonna piss somebody off no matter what I do, so I'm trying to decide whose number comes to the top of the lottery bucket. There's no two ways about it.
Understand.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't, so.
These are hard times. The inflation issues are not helping any of us.
So in regards to at least the mayor and council raise, is that something that we can at least agree to take off of, or how do we feel about that?
Been the
That was
lowest
more-
paid for this long, we might as well go a few more years.
Yeah, I'm not in it for the money.
So you'll make that adjustment. Okay. I did not read it, but Amber, I think you mentioned it. Is the salary survey for temps, all of that in this budget? Okay, I didn't see it.
The part-time wages, mostly like complex aquatic center,
Yeah.
there's a big jump there.
Yeah. It's mostly in Parks and Rec. That's
Yeah.
good.
And then the police.
Okay, well, we're just talking about the council. We're not talking about the Parks and Rec, because Travis hasn't mentioned yet, he probably will, but I can't help but think he's still struggling a little bit, trying to fill his temporaries and seasonal staff. Okay, anything, Joe? Randy, anything?
No, nothing from me.
Okay, anything? Diane, anything?
I think we'll move forward from here.
Yeah, anything? Okay, anything else? Anybody? Good time to speak?
I've been in your position before, it sucks. And I've been in front of a group when we've done a truth in taxation hearing, that also sucks.
It's hard.
But their memories are fleeting. So what that's worth.
I hear about 37% increase, actually.
Oh, yeah. And if you look, there is not a person left that voted that in. And some of it was because they chose to get out before they threw them out, and others were because they didn't get voted back in.
Right.
We've got to take little proactive steps along the way.
One thing on what Amber said, and Amber's done a great job of getting that piece and that, $200,000 that's left in there. There's still a little bit of wiggle room, but the thing that I have to decide for is PPE. Do I buy it or don't? We have 12 sets that are expiring this year, needs to be replaced. If I don't replace it, what does that happen? What services am I going to cancel? What kind of services do I shut down? Same thing with paramedic classes. I can't hire a paramedic, but I can send them to school. My budget stayed the same as last year. Paramedic school went up. Actually, it's just the cost to send 2 people to school is more than what I have budgeted.
Need a volunteer fire truck driver, I've got my CDL.
I'm ready to go there, Joe. So I'm that's
Okay,
the way it
Coach.
is right there. And just to do the maintenance and the fuel, the budget increase there, what Amber said, the budget increases is there. So I go after and look for, how can I increase my fees and to get that extra $600,000 so I can offset just a little bit. And that's what you say, hey, department heads, what are we doing? I'm looking for ways to make money every single day and to bring that ambulance back online to help offset what we're doing here. And every single department head is doing something like this to keep us afloat. It's not enough. We're so far behind. We're barely keeping our heads above water right now.
You can put me in as Barney Fife and you don't even got to give me a bullet.
Right here, just one. I think that's one.
Good comment, chief. Okay, anything else before we go for adjournment?
Would you just clarify when we come back? So on the firefighter, the wage increase, and be a little more direct on what the estimated revenue increase would be with those wages. So it's as clear as mud, but maybe a
To
little.
wash
clearer.
out the,
So-
Been putting together a really good spreadsheet on that. I'll
Okay.
make sure that's
All right,
available.
thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, chief. Okay, with that then, do I have a motion then to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Randy, Diane beat you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.